Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Happy Hour with Dr. Lisa. I am your host. I am Dr. Lisa. And first of all, I want to thank you all for being so patient and so kind and talking to me throughout my social media sites. Sometimes just to say hello, sometimes to ask me questions, and sometimes just to kind of shoot the breeze with me. It feels good. Thank you. Anytime you all want to reach me, you can always reach me on social media. You can give me a call at 765-205-1959, or you can email me at kidscanseeghosts@gmail.com. I'm everywhere. Just let me know what you need. Let me know what you need answered. I'm your girl. I'll try to do as best as I can to get it done. So this is pre-recorded, and I wanted to make sure you all heard from me this week. Yesterday was my anniversary, so I did put it on TikTok at Dr. Lisa 3, and I put it on Facebook, and I put it on Instagram at Kids Can See Ghosts Can You, and a picture of my husband and I celebrating our anniversary. So I did not come on yesterday because that's what I was doing. You guys got to put family first. Don't forget that. So I wanted to say thank you to all of you for joining me. Also, for those of you who keep in contact with me on social media, I appreciate it. And I also want to thank those of you from out of the country. I checked my statistics, and there are some of you listening to me as far as the Netherlands. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Wanted to start changing up my podcast a little bit. It's going to correlate with my blog eventually if I can get through all of these blogs. Seriously, I can write a whole lot about kids who can see ghosts, but right now I'm not really seeing kids. So, at some point these blogs are going to end. And I might save some of my stories just for the month of October every year. But I am leaning toward doing more questions and answers, and also providing you all with information that can help you with some of your questions as well. And so I'll give you an example. I actually get a lot of relationship questions, which is funny because I'm like, I'm not a relationship guru, but kinda. Haven't been married for quite a few years, and also the behavioral component of relationships I can certainly, talk to you all about. And then doggone it, just common sense. So some people just need a push. And so, that kind of real world advice is meaningful to a lot of people. And so I'll give you an example. There was a question that I answered on Quora. And somebody else actually asked me something about a topic like this that was very similar that had to do with affairs. So I decided to answer both. So the first question is, or it was posed on Quora, and it's a similar question to the other one. I'm sorry, I was eating some popcorn before I got on the air. And it says, my boyfriend keeps accusing me of lying to him. So he says he wants nothing to do with me. What should I do? So I had this panel discussion. One of the reasons I answered this question is because I said some stuff in this panel discussion, and somebody in the audience just felt it. And one of the things that I said was, we allow people to dictate what we want in relationships. And that's not all of us, that's some of us. And when we fall in love, we fall hard. That's all of us. It's not just women. Men fall hard too. And there are times when, because we fall so hard, that we don't put ourselves first. So for example, if someone wants to get married and the other person does not want to get married, typically the person who wants to get married will either hang around for a while to see what happens, or they will totally deny themselves what they want in the relationship because they love that person, and it helps the other thing they do is they accommodate that person's needs. And instead of saying, hey, I really want to get married, I love you, but this is not something that you want to do, I have to move on. That's not an initial response. So the behavioral part of us continues to allow ourselves to be in relationships when we know that we aren't satisfied. Okay. And so if a boyfriend or a girlfriend constantly accuses you of lying, well, what does common sense tell you? Either that person has something to hide themselves, or they just don't accept you for who you are, or they don't trust you. So my response to this person was to let him go. Just let him go. You have to remove yourself from people who are constantly accusatory or even paranoid about your actions. I mean, literally, who wants to live like that and who wants to be in a relationship that way? And you can't be happy that way. A relationship is only as happy as the two people in it. And so you cannot be happy with that unnecessary stress. So I said his behavior is questionable. And if it's questionable, you have to put yourself first and start to think in terms of, do I need this in my life? Is this a relationship that I can deal with? Can I withstand the constant badgering about lying when I know that I'm not? And then you have to look at that person and say, maybe you're actually lying and you're transferring your behaviors onto me. But the most important thing is determining whether or not you want to deal with it. And that would be the primary thing to do, because ultimately, if you don't want to deal with somebody accusing you of something that you're not doing, you can make a choice not to be with that person. You know what I've told my kids that people come a dime a dozen that you'll like. So you can sit at the bus stop, and there'll be 14 boys who come by, for example. You can go roller skating and meet all kinds of girls when you roller skate. You don't have to set yourself up to feel ever as if you have to stay with someone who does not make you happy. You do not. You put yourselves first. And so that was, a summary of the advice that I gave to that person. And another person asked a question about affairs, which led to other people asking me what to do in affairs, which is interesting. Because let me give you a disclaimer. I'm not a marriage therapist, not at all. I'm not even a therapist. At this point, I basically do psychological testing only. I am a tester, which is weird. A lot of psychologists don't necessarily want to do a lot of testing, and I literally can do it all day. I love kids and I like numbers and I like, helping schools and seeing where they are. And so I don't want you all to think that I'm a marriage and family therapist. You can go look at my bio on my website and clearly you'll see that's not my direction. However, I can probably share my thoughts about some of these questions pertaining to affairs. It's always the question of whether should I or whether or not can I stay or go, or should I stay or go? This person constantly cheats on me. This person cheats on me and they want me to be patient with them. That's a personal decision, right? Here's the way I look at affairs. Either you forgive the person and stay with them, right? That's the first scenario. If you forgive them, you work through it, and you don't continuously throw it in that person's face, especially if they're proven to you that they've changed. The other option is you forgive the person, but you can't remain in the marriage any longer. It's just too broken. The first choice comes from what you want to do. Hurt is there. It does not have to stay there, and it does get better. And it can get better. But the first step is deciding whether or not you stay. Now, for myself, because then people ask me, well, what do you want? What would you do? My answer is no. Personally, no, I don't stay for infidelity. Not at all. But some people can. Many, many millions of people have recovered from it. So it is possible. It's not anyone's job to judge the choice that you make. However, if somebody is actively doing this in your face and they do it repeatedly and they continue to do it, and as this question was posed, not only do they continue to do it, but they ask me to stay and be patient while they do it and tolerate it. How the heck can you ask somebody to tolerate your affairs? What kind of selfish person does that? You should not ask your spouse to stay with you or demand them to stay with you while you have affairs. That's not fair. Not at all. So what I share with this person is I flipped it back on this person and said, you tell me the reason that you stay. This person said love. Well, you can give off love, and if you give it off, you should receive it in your relationship. And obviously, this person wants to be with someone else because even when they're called out for their affairs, they continue to be with that person. You guys, you have to pick your self-esteem up. Some things are just common sense. This person is obviously not going to stop having affairs. You don't have to deal with it. You just don't. There are ways to heal. There's therapy to learn to cope. There are friends who can help lift up your self-esteem. You don't have to be a doormat for anyone. Not at all. And so one of the suggestions that I made was just ask the person if they want to be in a relationship. And then from that statement, you decide which way you want to go. Now, if you want to sit there and tolerate those affairs, that's your choice. But if you want out of the relationship, then you can also get out of it. Sometimes I don't know why people seem so stuck like that. Like this person is really stuck. Sometimes it's money. I do know that, finances. Sometimes it's love. I understand that. But you all have to make sure that you are understanding that when you love yourself, then you are strong enough internally to walk away from things that don't make you happy. I've had to do it. Many of you've had to do it. So I'm actually speaking to this person that sent me the message. You can do that as well. And the other thing is, you all can find a way. I'm speaking to that person primarily. Financially, sometimes I know for all of us it gets hard. We're all human, but one of the things you could do is you can find your way. Some people hold us back. Some people feed into our low self-esteems. There are some people who pick the right people that they know will tolerate these things. And I'm not saying that person was that type of person, but maybe that person is becoming that type of person by tolerating, this kind of nonsense. So if this person can't decide between you and the people or the person they're having the affairs with, then let it go. And if you've known about this all along for several years and allowed it to continue, the next question would be, then why are you questioning what you should do? You already know what you should do. It doesn't take everybody to help you make that decision. You are the best person to address your choices with without relying on his or her input to help you with that. Sometimes silence is golden, and you sit back and you sit by yourself and you take walks by yourself and you pray by yourself if you're a prayer, and you decide for yourself what you want to do. And you don't even need to tell a person like this who tells you, I want you to stay while I have a girlfriend. Really? You don't have to tell that person because that person really doesn't care about you that much. Not to me. Life is better than that, and you don't have to take it, and you can make positive changes within your life. So those are the two. It's not just two. There's a couple of people that chimed in about affairs, and but those are two questions that I picked because I specifically answered them. And I know at least one of the two people actually listens to the podcast and told me. So that's how I feel about it. You guys make choices, make good choices. You don't have to tolerate. I was just telling somebody yesterday, you don't have to tolerate that stuff. Just leave. And it kind of ties in with the blog that I wrote back in April of 2022. And it's called Just Ask. And I want to get into it. I see that it's pretty long. And so we'll talk about it as just kind of sum it up today. Of course, if you guys have questions, you let me know. So I wrote this blog around the time Ketanji Brown Jackson was nominated to the Supreme Court, which I can't tell you as an African American woman how that felt for me personally, but it felt really good. And I won't deny that publicly. It did. But when you guys watched it, if you did watch it like I did, then you noticed some of the things that were happening to her as she was defending herself and answering questions, right? And some of the things disappointed me because as a Black woman, when I looked at what she went through, I said, God, people don't understand what that feels like and that we go through that all the time. All the time. There were assumptions made about her. There have been assumptions made about me. There have been assumptions made about other African American women. And instead of sometimes getting to know us, because there's a failure to communicate with us, people make their own hypotheses about us. And that's what I observed happening to her. And I thought, wow, I think every Black woman felt that. And holding on to those stereotypes, it was troublesome to me because I saw it and I was thinking, I was like, girl, I felt that. I feel that. I hate when that happens. There's no reason to do that. They wouldn't question white men the way that they're questioning her or the way they question me. And so when you do not wear this color skin, or when you are not a female overall, sometimes you don't understand what that feels like. And there is a type of anger that you have within yourself where you just want to verbally blast everyone. But then you'll be deemed what? A Black woman with an attitude, and you may not get the job, or you may not get the nomination, or you'll get a bad evaluation, but all of that would be the consequence for defending yourself with stupid questions that were asked of sometimes. There's no reason to have, for example, a woman with such caliber and is overqualified, probably the most qualified person on the Supreme Court, and they berated that woman to a certain degree. Well, I know how that feels to have the most education and people still feel negatively about you and make assumptions and ask you dumbass questions to justify their own hypotheses. It is a problem. And so I wrote this because this is the same way some of my nebulous kids used to feel, or kids who could see ghosts. Ultimately, they felt the same thing, the same badgering, the same hypotheses about mental health, the same way, all of them. No one believed them. I have to defend myself. I have to give correct answers all the time. I have to prove that I don't have, mental health ailments. I have to literally answer this way every single time, because there are people out there when you don't have dark skin or skin of color, or when you can't see ghosts, or when you're not a female, or you're not of minority status, or sometimes when you are a white man, you got to constantly defend yourself because people are going to automatically assume that you're racist. So I get that. We all go through those different kind of things, and it's troublesome. So we don't necessarily make room for our ideologies or hypotheses to be tested. We just believe them and act on them. And so I was really disappointed in how she was questioned when I was watching it. And then the defense mode on their end, based upon how she answered, was just incredibly humiliating for her, And those kind of assumptions and hypotheses justified their attitudes, their behaviors, and their thoughts. And it's the same thing that I've gone through on jobs. My mother has gone through, my sister, Black friends, female friends that I have. When that was happening, we all were like, yeah, we get it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No matter what we do, sometimes it's problematic, And they stand by it. Even if their doctrines are incorrect, they stand by it. And they push others to fall in line with their nonsense. And anybody that goes against their thought processes has a problem. They're flawed. And they will find a reason to try to make others, or they will seek confirmation bias, and then they would try to make other people join in on their nonsense. And so there's a part of these individuals that are just too fearful to change their thought processes about people that look different than they do. So I observe this kind of stuff daily. I do. Where, being accused of things without, and let's be clear about this, without justification. More times than not, attempting me or others to take the blame for things that they didn't do themselves. Those automatic thoughts and assumptions drive their decisions about how to interact with others and how to interact in life. And sometimes it's so inappropriate. It is so grossly sad. It shows implicit bias and how those things drive their thought processes to the point where they become hurtful. Not only toward those that are the victims, because that's what they are. That's what I've been, a victim sometimes. But it also hurts that person who inflicts the wound. You cannot do wrong toward other people and then not come back on you at some point. And so I titled this Just Ask, because it's so easy to just sit down and have a conversation with someone and ask them. For example, I was accused of doing some stuff recently, like very recently. And I sat there and I was quiet and I thought, I wonder why they didn't, quote, just ask me. Because if they had asked me, then I would have told them what happened. But see, people gather information about you and believe that that information that they have about you is right. When actually, and I'll use myself as an example because I don't care, they did not come and ask me. And I said it. Had you asked me, I would have told you X. But you made an assumption. And it always goes back to, would you have made that assumption if I was a white woman? Would you have made that assumption if I was a white man? And I think when you go through it so much, I want you guys to feel this, that it is a healthy paranoia It really is. And this is actually things that social psychologists talk about. There's this healthy paranoia, that African Americans have. And it's because we go through this stuff all the time. And so this is just such a large issue. The cool thing about it is there are so many other people who would treat you better. And what I hope for her is that now that she's been on the Supreme Court several months, I hope the other Supreme Court justices have embraced her as a colleague and treated her much better than they did when she was questioned. God. I have so many examples of this, but I promise you, I'm not going to tell you all of them. I can even tell you, and I wrote it in the blog, so I'll just kind of sum it up. You kids have assumptions too. And I would like for you, because I know some of you listen to me, to make sure that you step outside of your own biases. And that doesn't have to be a race thing, it can be gender. Let me give you an example. I tell kids all the time that I've worked with, you guys stop being so aggressive toward your teachers and your administrators. All you have to do is effectively communicate with them. It's really easy to, quote, just ask, end quote, questions. It's very easy, And when you don't do that, it causes a lot of challenges for you. And it's an easy thing to start learning how to do at a young age. A lot of you are on your cell phones, texting and whatnot, and you're missing the ability to learn to socialize properly. So let me give you an example. I walked into a school and walked into a main office, and man, there was a office manager and a boy. And the boy was really getting a little bit outrageous verbally with the office manager. And the office manager tried her best to calm down and to calm this student down. I was standing there watching it. So the principals come out and everything, and they're like, what's going on? This kid is hysterical, blah, 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 blah. Now, this kid was late for class and asked for a pass, but there was no justification for this kid being late to class. But that's why the kid was in the office. So this kid was totally at fault. So no matter what this secretary, office manager was doing, she kept questioning, what happened before I write you a pass, I have to know, blah, 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 blah. And this kid is like, I will punch you in the face. Whoop, time out. Now, I see this quite often, unfortunately. And one of the things that I share with kids, getting back to it, is you guys have to remember that we want to love you. Teachers love kids. Administrators in schools love kids. They are there to help, right? But every now and then, there's some teacher or administrator who's going to fight back, right? Even if it was unintentional. And in this case, the teacher didn't mean it. It was a reaction, and I witnessed the whole thing. Oh boy. The assumption from this kid was this office manager wouldn't do anything to him, right? So he was mouthing off, went to right hook this teacher, which made everybody jump up. I mean, his office manager, made everybody jump up. However, this female office manager blocked it and hit him. Yep. Student was the aggressor. Office manager defended herself. Student was suspended for a long time. Office manager was able to retain her employment. We were all out there and saw it. Parents defended the office manager. Mm-hmm. So you see, you know, it's not always just adults making these kind of assumptions. It's not, that's an extreme example, but it applies, you know. So you guys don't think about the emotional consequences. That office manager cried. I'm sure Kajani went home and cried. When these things happen to me, I'm tough as nails in person. You won't see me sweat about it. When I get home, I go right to my husband and find him. And there have been, it has to hurt me really badly, but there are times when I have come home and just cried because there are people out there who do not get it. This student assumed that the office manager was defenseless and was a female. And how do I know? Because the student said it. You won't do anything. You don't know how to do anything. I remember that day as if it was yesterday. Assumptions are harmful. And even more so when there are other negative attitudes shared about this person. That's happened to me as well. You know, where one person will talk about someone based upon their own biases, and I'm talking about race at this point. And then you got a group of people bullying the person, and the person's like, well, what did I do? I've been in that situation too, where I'm kind of going, what is wrong with everybody? What did I do? But at this age, I will outright ask you, why are you talking to me that way? You know, who do you think you are? I don't have to take that. You don't address me that way. Oh, federal law says this. Oh, I'm a protected class twice, female and black. Oh, okay. You still want to have that conversation about, you know, racial biases? Because here's the proof. You know, there are some people who are just mean and have negative attitudes. And I think when I wrote this blog, I was kind of emotional about what was happening to her. Rightfully so, especially if you experience it. But there are so many good people out there who help you to remember that everyone is not this way. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I had no less than 12 people who embraced me over some things that happened to me, you know. And it felt so good because I was supported, I was heard. You know, I felt like it wasn't me. You know, what do they see? You know, what can we do? And I don't care who hears this, because some things are just unfair. Some things are just unfair. And that's how I felt. And for this woman who is now on the Supreme Court, what they did to her was unfair. What that child did to the office manager, unfair. Things that have been done toward me due to race, unfair. Things that are done to males, for example, assuming that they're going to be a certain way, unfair. Look at what's happening in our country right now. In America, how about that? Right now, you know, with the, you know, unfortunate lives being ended by black men in particular, you know, who are talking about George Floyd, who are killed. You just got some bad apples in every field. Psychology, you know, everywhere. It's not just the police. I embrace the police. I make my kids talk to the police. I feel good. Every time I see a cop, I wave. But you got some bad apples there who do things like that. You got bad apples in psychology. You guys know the number one lawsuit for psychologists? Probably not. So I'll tell you. Got some bad apples that are psychologists too. Having sex with their patients is the number one lawsuit. You got some physicians that make assumptions. You know, they don't want to treat black women in particular the way we deserve to be treated. You got some people out there who are bad politicians. So every field, right? So we just can't single out one area and say they're all bad because this happened. Or you can't single out black people who've done some things they shouldn't and say it's all black people. Or one white racist guy and say all white guys are racist. That's not fair. But guys, when this comes back, these kind of things hurt. I always think of something that I had a friend say to me and I had my mother say to me. Hurt people, hurt people. Hurt people, hurt people. And as I've grown in psychology, I've grown to learn that that is absolutely true, that hurt people hurt people. And so what we have to do is we have to heal. There's no reason for us to take our hurt out on other people. It's not productive. There are consequences. There are some people who don't tolerate it and will give you the business for taking it out on them. There are some people like me who can spot it and go, oh, that's a hurt person. That's somebody who's been through trauma. Everybody's not that patient. And that's what I told that kid when he attempted to hit the office manager. You judged her by her age and by the fact that you thought because she was in the school, as an adult in the school, who worked for the school, that she wouldn't defend herself. There are people who've made assumptions about you, I'm sure. They were wrong. There are people who make these kind of assumptions about me who are completely wrong. Somebody said to me yesterday, you lead with your heart. I said, I absolutely do because I love people. So one of the things that I would like for you to take from this podcast today, amongst quite a few, is that, oh man, I wish this world could be a better place where we can remove all of the biases and assumptions and, racist mentality. It just doesn't feel good and it doesn't look good for our country. I'm talking about the United States, and it doesn't make us a strong country, and it doesn't make it any better. Well, we keep hurting each other. A lot of this is just having conversations, and it starts at the top. If our leaders would have better conversations, that would trickle down to the rest of us. It really would. The key to working with people is what psychologists are really good at, and it's asking questions over and over and over again. Some individuals that work in human resources are really good at asking questions. Take note of it. When it's appropriate, just ask. When I come across kids that can see ghosts, I ask questions. At the end of this blog, I talked about how it can be hurtful when we don't ask questions about the things that these kids feel and the things that they see. It hurts them if we give them different, if we allow different stereotypes to come into play, such as they're crazy, and we don't engage with them about their experiences, because it's very helpful to just ask and communicate with these children. Sometimes you get a lot more information than you even bargained for if you just start asking questions. So you want to try not to stereotype anyone or make any assumptions in particular about these children. What I used to do with kids that can see ghosts is that I would be very cognizant of how I talk to these kids, because some of them were very fragile, because remember, the things that they could see were bothering them. Sometimes you guys have to look at people as being fragile. How many of you have encountered someone of minority status, for example, who's been hurt over and over again by other people, like me, due to race, and ask them or empathize with them about their experiences and ask them about it? I had an intern completely ask me about it. And she may have been one of the first people to just sit back and say, you know what? Tell me your story. You guys know I like to tell my story. So, I sat back and told her a couple of things. So with these kids, if you sit back and you learn about their experiences and that they're individuals and treat them that way each and every time you encounter them, you can break free of some of your stereotypes and assumptions. It's just not that difficult. When this intern began to really get to know me, she had far more empathy. Sorry, I'm putting my popcorn bag up. It almost fell over. She had far more empathy for minorities. She was there, but to actually ask questions made it more prominent and real. That's the perfect word, real toward her, because she could see the emotions, she could see it in my eyes, she can hear the experiences, she can ask questions about what was that like and why do you think they would do that to you, and et cetera, et cetera. That's the perspective that I came with these kids, because it was hard in the beginning for me not to make assumptions like, okay, this is mental health, or okay, are we dealing with, paranoid schizophrenia, I don't know, psychotic features of this or that. But it was really just a bunch of kids who start telling me their stories, right? And their parents' stories. There are some people who won't change, and that's fine. That's fine. And it's fine because you are the captain of your own ship, and it's your soul that you have to answer for. So you just want to be outright mean to a bunch of people, including these kind of kids, because I've seen people be mean to nebulous children. And if you just want to be mean, the consequences are yours. But I'd rather treat them with respect, ask about their experiences, and learn their characteristics and possibly why these things happen to them. So you can totally benefit from just sitting back and asking questions and listening instead of retaining your beliefs. Retaining your belief system. Just a sidebar real quick. Let's see. There was somebody that had an assumption about me. Didn't know. No, let me scratch that. How did it go? Didn't know that I was African American. And talk to me. And then the whole perspective changed because I was African American, this person found out. How the heck they didn't know is beyond me. But totally changed. And it was interesting for me because I just sat back and listened. And the interpersonal relationship was damaged because this person found out my race, heritage, and ethnicity. Or ethnicity and race, and it was a trip because I said, oh, okay. So you just totally changed because I'm different. Well, maybe if I was younger, that would hurt, but it didn't. I just said, well, you're entitled to your opinion, and you find someone else, and you remain biased. And this person, I said, I've never seen a Black person before. Then I was talking to somebody else who said, a lot of people like that just never even encounter Black people. They live in places where they don't have to deal with Black people in this country. And so they have their assumptions based on the media and don't have any kind of, personal relationships or anything like that to compare and to remove the biases and assumptions. And I thought, boy, that's interesting because I never thought of it that way. So be the change that you want to see. That's how I ended the blog. Be the change that you want to see. If you want to see different, be different. If you want things to change, you change. I've had to change, believe me. My parents grew up in a time when it was fight the power. And they have stories that I grew up with. My neighborhood has stories. Their parents, my friends, their parents had stories. I mean, our parents grew up, in the 50s and 60s. So, of course, they had Jim Crow stories and all those things. So, we grew up that way. So, over time, I've had to change, and I'm glad I did, So, I would like to end this end this podcast. That is blog 55. I was really proud of Ketanji. I keep pronouncing her name wrong. I'm sorry, Brown Jackson. Very proud. I say congratulations publicly. And next week, I will come back on. I'll probably be live next week, though. I just got a lot going on right now. And I'll answer some more social questions. But I am going to introduce a new child. That was blog 56. Next week is blog 57. I'm going to introduce a new child in. Woo-wee! We will talk about that child. You guys have a happy afternoon and a wonderful weekend. And I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.